Today's program is all around bringing in thought leaders that are on the inside, that are actively helping shape the program. So we're able to go ahead and hear how Bobby is evaluating innovation from a major league club, the Chicago Cubs that we all know. So we're able to go ahead and glean insight, build relationships, and continue to collaborate as we shape the space. So that's the setting the ground stage there. Bobby, welcome to the show, man. We're super excited to have you. All
Yeah,
right,
thanks for having me.
Bobby, we're excited, man. Well, listen, I think it's important to understand who you are, where you come from, and then we're going to dive into all this exciting stuff that you're working on today. So, give our community a little insight to your background and bring us up to current day, and then we'll get going.
Yeah. So I'm Bobby Basham. I work in the front office for the Chicago Cubs. I also founded a couple training facilities out in San Diego with some college buddies, Union Baseball Systems, and that's some attached to that's a couple travel teams. So in general, just have like a scope from 8-year-olds to pro players now, and I think that I've been in professional baseball with the Cubs 14 seasons, but as a player, another 7. So it's about 2 decades of experience in that side of it. And a lot of where I've gravitated to is just like the technology innovation space, like seeing the game change from when I was a player and it really didn't have these tools to sort of like the early mid 2010s, around 2015, 16, when the Cubs were good. There was this huge explosion of like technology and innovation. I was on the player development side. I became like the leader of our player development department, really during COVID, and just seeing like the speed of the change in the game and how different it is, not only from when I was a player to now, but even from 2020 to now is like pretty impressive. So some of the things I do on the side as well, gonna sort of just feel like I carved a niche in our front office of like looking externally. So a lot of like forward or like outward reaching stuff to either companies, universities, just like thought leaders, trying to bring things inward because like everyone wants to like pick the players. Not a lot of people want to pay attention to what's going on in healthcare, or fitness, or wellness, or computer vision. Not saying I'm an expert in anything, but I like to find stuff and talk to smart people. So excited to be a part of this group today. And so sometimes, we'll invest through the Cubs. Sometimes I'll invest personally. Have a ton of advisor gigs right now, just that have popped up from being around for a while. And there's a couple of familiar faces on this call, and we've gotten to know each other over the years. So yeah, it's my
How
1 minute
cool.
background.
How cool. I mean, what a unique perspective to come from playing to then, sitting on the other side of the fence and being a part of this evolution. I want to start this, sort of understanding the framework, Bobby. A lot of folks that we get a chance to talk about building in systems versus silos, right? And now we're watching the whole sports landscape go through a massive, sort of uptick as far as the asset class developing, new innovative technology comes through. Talk to us about the system that you've been able to develop when starting to evaluate what technology makes sense, where the space, baseball is going, and then ultimately, how do you make decisions in a de-risk capacity to actually make sure that it's successful as you implement them into your programs?
It's different. I think all that's well said. It's funny because teams, like, we're very private, right? And you have 30 teams competing over wins. Like, this is a pretty, like, there's no growing the pie here, right? Every team has 162 games, and as many wins of those you grab, like, you take one from somebody else. So it's a little bit different than like private innovation. What we generally are, I'd say like at a high level, the way the game has evolved is like, if you think that back to what Theo was doing and Moneyball, right?
Yep.
That was like finding different ways to value players from the box score, right? So that was our data source and that was our truth. And then, Theo was really good about going to the college level. There's a story about him going to a library or having sending his interns to a library to like write down all the stats of the college players so they can use that in analysis, right? So that was like a new data source. So somewhere along the line, you start to get these ball tracking technologies, and it's sort of what what drives that box score, right? So let's just own base percentage. All right, that's cool. What are the components of own base percentage underneath that, right? So we start to get, or let's strikeouts for pitchers. Why do pitchers strike out? Okay, they more batters. They throw harder. Cool. There's a radar gun. Okay, the ball moves more. All right. Like, what's the tracking technology? So that started to happen. And then what's sort of inevitably come is like you just keep going down levels, right? So why does the ball move more? It spins in these directions, right? Okay, how do you cause the ball to spin more? All right, what do their arm paths look like? What do their limb lengths look like? Okay, like how can we train guys to do this stuff? And you just keep following this path down. And a lot of what you do is you're just looking for like white space where we don't have data. What might cause this underlying trait that could filter back up into why we strike out guys more, right?
Yep.
How do we train that, right? That's player development. So it's like, how do we assess the value? How do we train the value? And then how do we find that earlier than anyone else? I do think like there are other things outside that dichotomy of just, that's they're a little harder to measure ROI, like health and wellness, like baseball is a little different than like an Olympic sport or even football where you're playing every day. Like peaking is not necessarily a thing. You just have to be ready, right? But in general, you're just trying to find things that really tie back into wins and what causes wins and what causes performance. And the deeper you go, like the more, the cooler nuggets you can find.
Super interesting. I think you touched on a lot of great points there. I'm gonna go more baseball macro for a second, and then we're gonna sort of drill down into, to what you do on the more day to day. But we're watching, all of us understand sort of private equity has moved into the space, and we're professionalizing the ecosystem younger and younger. I'm curious as you look at the evolution of baseball and the evolution of the athlete. Obviously, we want to be able to go ahead and identify talent earlier. We want to be able to go ahead and develop talent, and track that. How do you find balance and harmony between the love of the game and continuing to grow the sport and professionalizing it to make sure that we have the best products show up when, they get through the system to the big leagues? I'm curious just personally how, you approach that from an innovation lens.
Man, I think that's a hard question or something that's very hard to address from within a team. So
Yeah,
I'll take like a different lens and
sure.
just like my private work with
Yeah,
like
just sort of
the
Bobby to
league,
the side, and then we'll come back
the
to the team
team.
side for a second.
Yeah, because I have a little bit more control. I do think fun, and we can get into this later. I think it will be interesting to see how where innovation comes from because the stuff you're alluding like in the future, the stuff you're alluding to, I think teams like we have so many smart people now, like and so many experts and PhDs, and we're looking at there are things we know that just like aren't in the public sphere that we're doing now that are like really driving the game forward, and you might not hear about it for 5 years, right? And so I think that's been the norm. However, especially with the new CBA on the horizon, and even in other sports with some of like the PAs starting funds and the players being more involved in like technology, I don't know if that's going to continue. I don't know if the dollars are going to flow inward or if owners are going to look at that as a liability, quite frankly, right? It's just
Interesting.
another bottom line. And like, again, you alluded to like ROI and innovation. I think some of my biggest success stories have been just getting like discounts on things that were in early that turn out to save us a lot of money because that's tangible. I don't think that's actually the biggest ROI, but that's what you can point to when the CFO comes to you.
Sure.
So where I'm going with this is like with private equity and explosion in youth sports, even NIL, like is the innovation going to come at the lower levels, right? And how? And if you follow the money, like what is that going to look like? Is it a more shared? Is it going to be better because it's shared and more public, right? Or, are you going to lose this, effectively like 30 Google level engineering teams across the game that aren't going to be working on this stuff?
Interesting. No, it's I mean, look, I think it's a very it's a real question, right? And I think depending on what seat you sit in, there's different perspectives to it. I love the insight there. And I think that, it's from our lens, like it's really interesting to watch how the whole chessboard is starting to move. And, baseball just happened to be at the center of that. So I'm curious, like we have a lot of innovators, covering everything, right? From, deep tech and leveraging AI to fan engagement to, the athletic trainers of the world, right? Bobby, when you get pitched, talk to us about, like, I'm sure you get an influx of founders that come into your world that want access, that would love to partner. Give us some nuggets. What sticks out when founders show up that you're like, this is really compelling and it moves the conversation forward? And where do some fall short that we could learn from here on this call today?
Yeah, I think to start, we're looking for certain things, and we try to keep a running list of like these are interesting topics and things, and I'm way more likely to pick up the phone if you hit those boxes, even if your pitch isn't good, right? So I think there is some sort of like you're just playing in a space that has some value to us, and like it's our job to sort through a little bit of the crazy to get to the good. And aside from that, like, I think there are different, like, well polished, put together, this is your need here. But like the first, second conversation, I think humility is like a huge part of this. You'd be shocked how many peer-reviewed studies that prove that your product makes guys throw 3 miles per hour harder or more that we've seen, and just none of them are really actionably true, right? And if it was 0.25 miles per hour, we would still be interested, right? Even if there's like, hey, we have this link, we think it works, like, but we can't quite prove it. That's more compelling to us because like, oh, this is like an intellectually honest company that will be able to figure out if this thing can like help our players. And we're also like we're risk takers. So if we can do it easily, effectively, test it, prove it, and like it's not a heavy lift or a high barrier of entry, like we're kind of apt to do it. But if it's, hey, we have the secret, it's a black box, and you're gonna have to pay to see this, it's kind of hard to get traction that way, at least with teams. Listen, there's some instances like you're gonna want to do that, but like it just makes it a lot harder for us to like move forward because we tend to take lots of small like strategic risks instead of like pushing our chips into one basket like initially. But if your product is worth it to us, then like that's when the pocketbooks open up.
Interesting. I think that we can all sort of learn from that, right? And I want to double down on that, right? With you guys having a running list, a lot of these things, like you said, they're private, right? Like, and we don't know, it's always this chicken and egg. So, advice for founders to meet you where you're at and learn about the club, where we haven't gotten a shoe into the door yet. Any advice that you would give on, like, is it paying attention to macro trends and trying to associate them and sort of taking your best guess? Just sort of curious when it comes to like pinpointing problems or opportunities within the organization. Maybe the better pointed question is, do you think all organizations are dealing with the same pain points, or do you think that each one is a little more nuanced?
Each one's a little more nuanced, maybe a little bit of both, right?
Yeah,
Like I think one, we're a copycat. Like all professional sports leagues and teams are copycats, right? Like we don't want anyone else doing something better or cooler than us. And like there's a real strategy to being a fast follower. And like I think a lot of teams fall into that bucket. So getting the first one's always the hardest because if you get the first one, someone's gonna call us. There's so many relationships around baseball at least where the Red Sox tree, the Indians tree, right? Like they run pretty deep across the game, and there are just tons of other trees within that. But I think that it's hard on a platform like this to say like this is my specific need. But if I'm at a conference or an event or like you're in the stands, it's way easier to talk freely, right? And there
absolutely.
is I think there is value in getting that out to the ecosystem because we always think that the other team knows teams actually operate like way differently inside each, like the perspectives and what people do. Like they are similar, but like they don't know everything we're doing. We don't know everything we're doing. We're also not inventing the wheel every time we come up with a new thing, right? Like there's three other teams probably doing the same. So I think there's value in just like talking to the community like this in a place where it's not public. And if you can clue into the right people, like you're probably gonna get a good pulse on what's going on.
I agree with that. Success leaves clues, right? And it just goes to show we have to show up in these rooms, going to winter meetings, Bobby, right? You start to pick up and you see themes of what everyone's talking about. And I think as founders and innovators, there's no better place to be. And it's like ultimately what problem are you solving? And I think on a macro lens, like when you put yourself in these scenarios, like you said, like there's only so many ways you can distill it down and business is business, right?
And winter meetings is a great example because I mean, Brian's been there a bunch. Like there's no more like there's probably a group of 8 people that are stuck in the room talking about players and trades, and everyone else is just trying to find something to do for like 48 hours. So it's a great opportunity. Like maybe we don't come to your meeting, but we'll certainly meet you for coffee or a beer or something like that. And like those organic conversations are usually a lot better than trying to get 6 small people in a room and like walk, do the business talk, right? Like you just
Listen,
get more honest information.
I saw a lot of you guys at Howl at the Moon over there in Orlando, and that's where I heard a lot of the business gets done. So take notes, everybody. All right, a couple more questions, guys. If you do have questions for Bobby, feel free to just drop a line in the chat. We'll make sure that we leave ample time to bring you on. One thing that I'm genuinely curious about is this intersection of athletes and entrepreneurship. As founders, we look to bring athletes on our cap table, have them on our advisor board. I'm curious, how much value do you place on that when said athlete does endorse a brand or is an active participant from the cap table? Does that really move the needle from a decision-making standpoint?
As an investor, yeah, right. It's a credentializes your brand. Like it's a person who's like knows the space, is deeply invested, is probably a user of that. And I do think there are different levels of athletes, right? There's some really good investors out there that do a good job, not because they're athletes, because they're just smart, motivated people. As a team, a lot of the stuff we are interested in is super early, right? Because we want to shape it. And by the time you have like some of these big name athletes on that, like they're shaping it, so it's a little less interesting from that perspective. So it depends on your use case and
It's a
who
great
it
nugget.
is.
It's a great nugget, though. Talk to us a little bit like you want to shape it, right? When you say it's early, give us a little expand on that if you don't mind for us.
Like front offices in general like don't have the biggest budgets. Most of our budget goes to players and then the rest goes to staff. And while we are spending millions of dollars, it's a drop in the bucket compared to like the Cubs revenue, right? So what we tend to do is trade IP and our logo for access, right? And the ability to get in early because like you're big, it's sports is a pyramid, right? Youth's at the bottom, pros at the top. Like that's the TAM. So if you're designing a product for the youth market, that's probably not going to be that interesting to us. So we try to get in early where we're like, hey, these are the things we care about. And we're a bigger deal to you where you can attract more capital. And also like, again, we have these teams of PhDs that we want like very specific things. And if we can get something that we can use, that kind of helps you jumpstart and maybe make version 2.0 or 3.0 that addresses like college, youth. And that's usually how it goes. It goes like pro, college, youth, if you get there, right?
Yeah.
So most of the time when you come to us with an early stage product, it's not going to fit us, but we have an idea how it will fit us. And if you can sort of get it closer to what we want, then we're way more interested. And maybe it's a way we don't have to spend a lot of money, but you get tons of value that outstrips the money we would spend.
I think, and I want to double and triple down on this point because I think a lot of folks go to the front office and are hoping for the multi-million-dollar contract. And I think the reality is, especially early in our innovation journey, it's more of a stamp of approval and leveraging the IP. And then it's how do we use that as leverage to go back, right? The same way we would think about an athlete on our cap table. So I think that sometimes there's a misalignment in expectations when what am I going to get from the Cubs if we actually do a commercial deal I think there's a disillusion to the market versus what you just sort of expanded on and the reality of how this deal shapes. So I think that's super, super insightful, and we can all take that back when and just showing up the right way and level setting expectations. We've had a couple come through, and then it'll just be a little more conversational. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Cubs open up in St. Pete with the Rays this year. Is that correct?
I thought we, yeah, I might not. I thought we opened up in Chicago, but I'm not sure. I
Well,
think
maybe your
there's
first road
some,
series is going to be down here, and I was
yeah,
going to say,
yeah.
but so do you travel with the team? Like, what is your
I don't
involvement during the
anymore.
season?
Yeah, there was 1 year where I traveled with the team, but primarily like there's a road staff that's going to be like your advanced scouts and your sports staff, your coaching staff, and usually there's like one front office executive, like an AGM or GM or president that goes along. But I spent 1 year on the road 10 years ago, and even though you're flying in private planes, man, it's a grind.
I
It's a
was gonna say.
lot of games and 6 months. So I don't miss that since I have little kids.
They
But
say it's a young man's sport. That's for damn sure. It's not for the
yeah, I
faint of
did live in
heart.
Sarasota for a while. It's
I was gonna
awesome.
say, well, I was hoping that we could maybe finagle you down here. We got a lot of members on the screen that are down here, so but at minimum, we'll definitely find time to cross paths. Bobby, we look forward to you folding you into our world and continuing to build together. So I'll leave you guys how I always do. My man Jay said you could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here, and for that, we're super appreciative. Hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll see you guys next week. Talk soon, everybody.
Hey, Scott.
See you
Great.
guys.